It's the weekend, so I'm having breakfast out here at my place. I have a hamburger bun. We had grilled burgers this week, and there's a hamburger bun left over, so I thought I would make some cheese toast. A shout out to Pearline Williams. She used to make the best cheese toast in town over at Child Time in Seabrook. I have a story to tell. It's a lengthy one. It's a true story, something that happened in my past. And it involves an upcoming trip to Branson, Missouri. So I wanted to give you a little background on why I particularly want to go to Branson, and Daniel and his family have agreed to come along and make it a family vacation, and we plan to drive to Branson with the kids, tentatively scheduled for Thanksgiving weekend. We would leave on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving and return Sunday. But there's a reason we're going to Branson, and that's the story I have to tell. I want to go to the wildlife refuge and maybe sit out there and tell you the story. Flowers are hanging on. It's as beautiful as ever. The story I want to tell you about took place in February and early March of 1976. My dad had just died of cancer in December of 1975. I also turned 18 that month and was a senior in high school, but I had already quit school and was staying home with my mom. By February, I was looking for something to do and answered an ad in a Mother Earth news magazine for a position as a nanny to a family in Harrison, Arkansas. My mom was all for it. It was her magazine. But no, she was really hoping to have me settled. She had her hands full. After some communication with the family, via mail and landline telephone, I was accepted for the position. So with little less than a wing and a prayer, I boarded a Greyhound bus in Columbus, Texas, and headed for Harrison, Arkansas. I arrived at my destination in Arkansas, and the family picked me up at the bus station.
or at least the man did, the man of the family. And mind you, this was over 40 years ago. So there are certain aspects of this adventure that stand out, of course. But other parts of the story are a little hazy. For instance, who picked me up at the bus station? I suppose it was him. I do not have a real clear memory of that. But I do remember that first night getting to the place and meeting the family. And what I did realize was the man was much older than the young wife. Now, I was 18, and I would say his wife was maybe in her late 20s, 28, 29. She had 3 small children, and she was very much pregnant with the 4th child. But the age difference is what got me. He was, in my eyes, a very old man. And of course, I was 18, like I said. So a 30-year-old to an 18-year-old is old. But I would say, to the best of my memory, he may have been in his late 40s, middle 50s, mid 50s. He had a beard, gray. So let's just say he was 50 years old. Here's another thing. There was another young woman there, and she was more my age. Maybe she was 20. But she was there too. What I soon discovered, and it was one night, maybe I was there 4 or 5 nights, and we were all in the living room. The kids had gone to bed, and he stretched out on the rocking chair and put his feet on an ottoman, and he wanted us, me and the other young woman there, to rub his feet. I was instantly uncomfortable, of course, but that was the start of what would soon become clear to me. But I had to do it. I mean, what choice did I have? So she and I sat on either side of the ottoman, and we rubbed his feet. After a while, I realized that the young woman, she would spend a lot of time with him. There was another building on the property close by, and I think that's where that young woman stayed. I had a room in the main house, which was actually a mobile home. So as the days developed and the weeks went by, and it wasn't long that I was there altogether. I may have stayed a month, if that. But that's getting ahead of the story. That's getting ahead of the story. I had taken the bus to Harrison, Arkansas, but they didn't live in Harrison. They lived 20 minutes, 30 minutes out from Harrison into the country somewhere. So I had no idea where we really were, but they did have a house in Harrison that he did some work at. And one day he was going there to do some work and have an overnighter, and he wanted me to come with him. So I was a little bit anxious about that, and I felt very uncomfortable, of course, but what choice did I have? I went with him, and I remember, this is true, I had notebooks, journals. I was a writer, so I carried things with me. And I was writing a letter to my friend, Lizzie Ripple, and trying to explain to her what I thought was happening at that household, and how uncomfortable I was. I didn't know exactly what to do, how to get out of the situation. And I remember I was constructing that letter while we were at the house, and he was doing his work, and he and I were alone. Well, I put my material up, of course, for the night and went to bed. And red wasp alert. Okay, coast is clear, I think. So I went to bed that night. The door opened, and he came in there. And I don't want to get into all kind of details because of who could be watching. But let's just say I was put in a very compromising position. And I made it very clear to him that I didn't want this to happen. And even though he pressed somewhat, he didn't, he left me alone. And he left the room, and that was that. I don't think I slept a wink that night because I realized that I was in a grave situation. What made it even worse was the following day when we were packing up to get ready to go back to the mountain area. I couldn't wait to tell Lizzie Ripple in the letter what had transpired during the night. My letter was gone. He had gone through my things, and he took that letter and I guess destroyed it. And my heart just sunk when I realized that he had gone through my things. And so that's when I began to formulate a plan. I can't tell you that the plan was foolproof. In fact, it was sort of made overnight. It was like, okay, I'm getting the heck out of here. What I did, it was on a Sunday, and I had the afternoon off, and maybe the day off of watching the kids. And mind you, it was, say, the beginning of March by this time, or the end of February, something like that. And we're in the Ozark Mountains, and it's cold. So what I decided to do, under pretense of going off to write in my journal, I decided I would double clothe. I wore like 2 pair of pants, a couple of tops, my jacket, I guess. I packed my toothbrush, I remember, toothpaste. I had cigarettes, I have to tell you. I had a lighter or matches, some form of fire. I put it all together, and I went off. They had an apple orchard over there, to my memory. And I went to the orchard, and I told them I was going to the orchard to write and just to spend some time, hang out there. I'm sorry, I didn't plan this out exactly what to say. I'm just speaking. But I did go out there, and once I felt it was safe, I just kept going further and further back. Like, I would sit at a place in the orchard, and then I would look behind me, and then I would go further back. And of course I was keeping an eye on the homestead and just wondering if anybody was watching me, which they probably were. But I just kept going further back. And finally, when I lost sight of the house and I knew they couldn't see me, I just took off. Took off into the middle of nowhere. And I was running away, pure and simple. And that is how I became tangled up in the Ozark Mountains. Just nothing but forest. And I just plunged myself in, determined to escape these people. Did I ever think of bear, mountain lions, cougars, anything like that out there? No, that never crossed my 18-year-old mind. I was merely wanting to get away from those people. And I thought, I suppose, I would try to be able to find my way home. Eventually, I didn't know what to do but to flee from them. And so, as I struck out there into the wild, I just walked, and I walked, and I walked. And altogether, I discovered at the end of that day I actually walked 15 miles in terrain you wouldn't believe. It was something else. Okay, so I just kept walking. I remember that I did become very hungry during the course of the day, and I ate some of my toothpaste. Just kind of rubbed it on my tongue because I was so hungry. And I don't know if I had anything with me to drink or if I drank straight out of a mountain creek. I think that's what I did. When I got thirsty. But eventually I happened upon a railroad track, and I was just overjoyed because I was in such mountainous terrain, forest terrain. When I saw the railroad track, it was like a sign of civilization. I was overjoyed, and I was determined to stick on that railroad track because it was going to take me to a town. It was going to take me out of the wilderness. So I started walking on it, and it was similar to this trail. Just, it was in the middle of nowhere, people. Railroad tracks in the middle of nowhere. And I just kept following them, and it was something, though, the terrain. Now I know that it was a lot of limestone, and eventually I came upon a cave. And it was right off of the railroad tracks, and I crawled into the cave. It was just a small one. I mean, the depth of it may have been 6 to 8 feet. But I crawled in it and trying to decide what to do. But I built a little fire. I got some sticks and stuff together and had a little fire in that cave. I do remember that. So I know I had my cigarettes, and I was probably sitting in that cave, smoking and thinking what in the world to do. As I was going down the railroad track, lo and behold, I came upon a bridge. And it just about had my stomach drop when I saw this bridge, because it stretched seemingly to an 18-year-old. It stretched from one mountaintop to another. And it was just like, oh my goodness. And it had no railing. That's the deal. It was just like this straight bridge, a railroad track across nothing. I had 3 choices. Cross the bridge, return 10 miles in the wilderness, or go down all the way and try to cross up and connect to the railroad tracks on the other side of the mountain. Not very good choices. What I decided to do was cross the bridge. I've told this story many times. I've even touched upon it in the recent novel I wrote called Leaving Blackstone. I crawled across that bridge, and maybe a third of the way, I don't think it was halfway, there was a little platform to the left of the bridge. To the left of the tracks. There was a little platform with some kind of box on it, I guess, and I did crawl to that platform, and I was just in near a panic. Anyway, I stayed on that platform and gathered enough courage to continue crawling across the bridge to get to the other side. And it was traumatic. I just broke down and started crying. And I remember thanking God and that I just couldn't believe I got across. And then the next hurdle along that trip was the railroad tunnel. And as I'm trudging along, I come upon this railroad tunnel. And it would be okay if it were just a tunnel. But it was a long tunnel. And I looked to see what my choices were. I could go up into the wilderness again and lose my railroad tracks, or go through the tunnel. Well, I determined to go through the tunnel, but I'm telling you, I began and I maybe made it 30 yards, if that, but it was damp. It was scary. I remember I saw a dead rat or something laying in a puddle of muddy water, and I said, oh, I cannot go through. I cannot see. As it turns out, I couldn't go through the tunnel, and I decided to climb up and over it. And I didn't know anymore what to do. It was getting later on in the afternoon now, but I was very hungry. I was so tired, and I just realized I couldn't go through the tunnel. So I just penetrated the woods again, the wilderness, and just started climbing up, up, up. And at one point, and this is very important to say, as I was on the incline, I slipped, fell, tumbled some, dropped my notebooks. And my fall was so hard that I dropped my material and it slid way down the incline. I think I had a couple of scrapes from that, and I may have started crying then too. I was so discouraged, and I had to ponder it, and I had to think. I could not, I think I started to leave, just say, I'm not going down there. I cannot go down there. But I could not leave my journals, and I did go down and get them. I went down that incline and grabbed my journals and brought them back up with me. And that took a lot. I remember it took a lot to do. I continued through that particular thicket of wilderness, and lo and behold, I came upon a barbed wire fence. And it was like, a fence! Someone owns this property! A person owns this property. I was so excited. It was just another form of civilization, I guess, in my eyes. It was an old fence. I mean, old rickety fence, but it was a fence. And I was just like, oh my gosh, there must be something nearby here. And yes, it was. It was a road. A road. I just started walking on the road. It wasn't 5 or 10 minutes for an old rickety pickup. It was an old farmer. He stopped and said, Sonny, you need a ride? I said, sure. And I asked him if there was a town nearby. He said he wasn't going to the town. He was heading home, but he would drop me off along the route that would lead me to town. And I thanked him, and he did just that. I didn't make it to a town. I came upon a house. All right, I have to break in at this point because of the wind distortion out there. I did finish the story out there at the refuge, but I couldn't use the footage. All right, so where was I? I ventured upon that house, and there was a middle-aged couple there, very kindly, very helpful. I asked for some water, and they gave me more than water. They gave me a Coke. The woman fixed me a sandwich, and they wondered who I was, of course, and how did I end up alone out there. And so, not knowing how to tell the truth, I told a story. And I did mention the family that I was staying with and said that I got lost. Being as kindly as they were, they wanted to do what they could to return me to the family. And that might sound like the worst case scenario, but that's what happened. And actually, it proved to be the best for me in the long run. However, the man took me back to that family, and as we were driving back, he is the one who told me that I had traveled 15 miles. But I was returned to that family, and the family that I had run away from. And although they didn't say anything, I am pretty sure they put two and two together that I had tried to run away. And from that point on, from that day on, I let it be known that I wanted to go home. And eventually, they let me go home. They even bought the bus ticket for me and put me on the bus in Harrison, Arkansas, and I ended up back in Texas. And that concluded that most unusual adventure. And you may wonder, what in the world does this story have to do with Branson, Missouri? Remember I mentioned Branson way back there somewhere? Yes, so what I discovered, okay, here's the deal. When I first moved in with Daniel and his family, Daniel was gone a lot, and Crystal and I were here a lot together, and one evening I told her this story, and she was so interested in it, and that prompted me to look online and see exactly where I was, and if I could pinpoint the railroad bridge and the tunnel. And lo and behold, once I discovered the county that Harrison was in, I looked up railroad tunnels and bridges in that county, which is Boone County, Arkansas, and discovered that there are only 2 railroad tunnels in Boone County. And as it is today, I was able to see pictures of both and easily picked out the one that I had come upon. It was incredible. After I had located the tunnel with Google Maps, I could trace the tracks all the way through that rugged terrain until I came upon that railroad bridge. And the same bridge I had to crawl across over 40 years ago. I could see it again. It was unbelievable. I found out that Branson, Missouri is only 10 miles from where the tunnel is. And that became important when I also learned that Branson offers a train ride, one of their biggest tourist attractions in that Ozark Mountain area. And that train ride, which is nearly a 2-hour ride, goes through that tunnel and over that bridge. So that is how that story in Branson, Missouri connects. Want to go to Branson, Missouri and take a train ride?
Uh-huh.
You do?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we're going to try to go for Thanksgiving. And we'll go see the mountains and the forest and ride on a train. Okay?